In this episode, we sit down with Tommy Hatto, body image and well-being campaigner, influencer, public speaker, and actor. In this episode, we delve into Tommy's life from being thrown into Hollywood at 17 years old, his eating disorder and his body dysmorphia, and the ups and downs that he's gone through his life. This episode is not to be missed. I hope you enjoy it. Tommy.
Hi.
Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So you're a well-being and body image campaigner. What was the motivation behind starting that?
Yeah, so, it came very naturally to me a couple of years ago. So I have a background, I'm an actor, I've modeled, and didn't plan to get into that. And kind of from that journey is when I really started to look inwardly at myself and think, okay, actually, the experiences that I've had growing up, I now need to kind of use my platforms and talk around that. So, growing up, I grew up in a very small town in the west country of England, and wasn't the most popular of kids at school. And I think, when you're like a teenager, your biggest priorities at the time are, wanting to hang out with mates and chase fit girls and things like that. And, that was something that I wasn't very conscious of it at the time. But when everybody else around me was starting to do that, I was like, okay, well, actually, maybe I should start doing it now. And, what I had found was I had very low self-esteem. I didn't realize it at the time, but I look back and I think, yeah, okay, I had a lot of low self-esteem. And I would go home and I would watch these American TV shows, and I would see that it was the popular guys who would be getting the girls, and they would be having all the friends, and they would go to parties. And I almost saw life imitating art in a way that was happening in my school. So I was like, okay, well, what's the correlation here? What's happening? And then why don't I feel like that? And it was because, well, I assumed it was because they looked good and they had great bodies and they were athletic. And I thought, okay, I need to get in shape because I hated sports at school. And I thought, okay, I need to exercise. So I started exercising. Didn't really know what I was doing, because for anyone who has ever tried to Google how to get in shape, etc., you Google it and you're told like 10,000 different articles on how to get in shape, but like 10,000 different ways to do it. So I was like, this is a minefield. I don't even know where to start. So I just went, okay, well, I know to get in shape, you have to eat less and move more. So I started doing that. What happened was I had an eating disorder off the back of that. I suffered from anorexia in sort of my later years of high school when I was around 15, 16. And, at the time I didn't realize it, because I was getting a lot of compliments about the weight dropping off and I was looking better. And that gratification was so intoxicating for me because I just wanted more of that. Because I've always kind of grown up as blended into the background. So then when people were like making nice, positive comments, I was like, I need more of this. It was one of those dopamine hits. But it did lead me down a very slippery slope in terms of my health, and I was constantly in and out of the GP. And yeah, and then, I ended up sort of with anorexia and then eventually bulimia. Then after school, I moved to London. I did an internship in journalism, and I got scouted by a casting agent who, out of the blue, it does happen. I never even wanted to get into acting, but, they saw me and they were like, come to this audition. And I was like, okay, sure, I'll come. So I went and I got the role, and I got signed by an agent, and I filmed my first movie. And
What was the movie?
the movie was Thor 2.
Really?
It was, yes, yeah. So I'm in the second Thor movie, just a small part, but that moment was like.
And how old were you at this point?
I was like 17. I literally just came out of school. Really, sometimes I think back at it, and because people ask me about this, and it's not until I think like, wow, okay, did that happen or not? You know, because I grew up, my parents always, you know, when I first I moved to LA and I lived out in LA. And when I was first going out there, I remember everybody, my parents included, saying to me like, this is a scam. You know, these types of things do not happen to people like us, people like you.
That's what your mum and dad were saying.
Yeah. I mean, at the time I was very resentful of them, because I thought, you don't know, you know, somebody's taking a chance on me. I look back now and I think, you know, it didn't come from a place of that they didn't believe in me. It was that just they had never grown up knowing about anybody who ever was given these types of opportunities.
You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. So, and again, you know, I think just because, you know, I'm mixed race, and I think, you know, there was just a lot of different factors that played into that. So I don't hold it against them at all. I think they were just trying to protect me and do the best that they could do.
Just a quick one before we get back to the episode. We're trying to hit 5,000 subscribers before the end of the year. So if you love this podcast and you love what we're doing, then a quick and easy way to support it would be to hit the subscribe button. Thanks very much. Now let's get back to the episode. When you were going through this amazing experience of being on Thor 2, were you still dealing with the anorexia and the bulimia?
Yes, I was starting to come out of the recovery. I was still dealing with it. And I don't think it ever goes away. So I was still doing that. But, you know, what was really important, and I didn't realize it at the time, was at that point in time, I felt like no self-worth. I felt ugly, I had low self-esteem, but somebody else saw me and thought I looked good, I had potential, something. And that's kind of spurred in my brain, actually, what we think about ourselves is not necessarily the truth, you know, because at my lowest, somebody saw something in me. So then when I started that career and I was sort of traveling the world and having this really awesome life, very surreal, that helped me recover from an eating disorder quite quickly. Doesn't ever go away. I still kind of have days now, but
how do you deal with that on a day-to-day? It's like for some people like myself, like there's days where like I've really struggled with my mental health in the past and it never really goes away, but there's ways that you deal with it. Like for me, it's exercise. Is there different ways that you help cope with that, or you have mechanisms or tools that help you on a day-to-day basis with an eating disorder, or any advice that you'd give to somebody that is struggling severely with an eating disorder?
Consistency.
Yeah.
I think for me, I shifted my mindset a lot. I think a lot of the work has to be done on ourselves.
Yeah.
I think when we realize that it's you have the power to be able to make this change, and everything that happens externally, it all comes back to you. And so for me, it's around being consistent, that, you know, I enjoy exercising. So making sure that I go to the gym and exercise in whatever capacity, whether that's 10 minutes, whether that's an hour, eating the right foods, getting enough sleep. I'm a big believer in like holistic well-being, in just making sure that you're not just going to the gym all the time, but you're neglecting what you eat, or you're neglecting your sleep, or vice versa. You know, it's everything. You know, it's everything, and that's how I found is I cope the best. There are days, events where I know are my trigger points, things like Christmas. You know, when I'm given a load of chocolate, I know from the impact from the eating disorder is that I have a tendency to binge eat.
Right.
So when I get given all the chocolate, everything is gone in an hour, because I have to, it's like out of sight, out of mind. I have to eat it and I can't control that. And I know that is from that past experience. But knowing that and knowing myself and being self-aware helps me deal with that a lot better. Like with and then obviously kind of recovering through that and then moving into sort of the entertainment industry, I had a lot of body image issues going there because essentially I was now making money off the way that I looked. For somebody who never really thought he looked that great, I was now making a living from how I look. And it gave me a lot of negative body image issues about myself.
I can imagine that would put a lot of pressure on yourself in looking in the mirror thinking I have to be perceived as 100% me every single day.
For sure.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a lot of pressure, isn't it?
It's a lot of pressure. I actually suffer from sort of muscle dysmorphia, body dysmorphia. I was in the gym constantly because, you know, during that time, you know, my management, they paid for a personal trainer for me. They paid for a nutritionist. I had a life coach. I had a dermatologist. And don't get me wrong, that gave me so much knowledge, all the knowledge that I was craving as a young kid on how to be the best version of myself. I had that at my fingertips now, and it taught me so much. But at the same time, was because I had that knowledge and I put it into practice, I was now like the A-class standard of what Tommy should be. I looked great, you know, I was at my healthiest, and I always felt that I needed to be better. So I was always in the gym. I was always finding ways like, how do I get bigger and things like that. When I would go and meet people, I was always very, very self-conscious around, you know, would they like who they see in person compared to the person that they see on socials or in a magazine? Do I look the same? And that always played at the back of my mind. And I think when you're going in that industry, when you're going to auditions and castings, you know, it's not roses and, you know, sunshine, because I've been told no probably like 700 times that you're not the right fit. You know, I've been in Asia before at castings where I've walked in the room and the casting people have like laughed at me and just told me to get out. You know, it can be very cutthroat, and it does play on your mental health immensely.
I can imagine. I can imagine. You said something earlier about the internal self-worth. How do you navigate your own self-worth? Obviously, looking out into the conversation we've just had and everything that you're doing in life at the moment, the perception is that you do have a positive self-worth. How have you been able to capsulate that and make that a positive connotation as opposed to negative through you're the same age as me, aren't you? 28.
Yeah.
So since 17 years old, appearing in this huge film, still dealing with certain issues. Now, through that 10-year period, what has been the journey through that self-worth and having that positive self-worth?
Again, it just comes back to being much more self-aware about me and knowing that, you know, I'm okay. Me, I think to get to a place where you're just content with who you are and you're at peace with who you are and you accept yourself. And I'm still on that journey. I think we're all on that journey. We're all evolving because life is an evolution. So I think it's around, you know, there are times when, you know, you want to give up or you want to be like, I just don't want to do this anymore, or I can't do this, or, you know, I'll find something else to do. And my message would be, don't, you know, just hang in there and keep believing in what you're doing. And, you know, it will course correct itself. And I think that is kind of my Northern Star that I, you know, really focus on, is that I keep doing this because I know who I am and I know what I want to bring to the table and I want to know what I want to do. And that's why I start to advocate around mental health and body image online. Even on the days where I wake up and I think, you know, I don't feel so great in myself, or why am I doing this? You know, I believe in the bigger mission. And that's the thing that keeps me very positive, is because I know the impact that it's having on other people. I always try to make sure that I go to, you know, for anyone listening, that you go to bed at night and think, am I okay and happy with what I did today? And am I happy with the person that I'm becoming each day? And that's what keeps me sort of with the positive mentality.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you hit the nail on the head for me. It's the self-awareness.
Oh, it's a huge one, right? It's a difficult one,
Yeah.
but it's a huge one.
I always say, and I speak about this a lot, and I know the listeners will laugh because I probably talk about this in every podcast, but self-awareness is the key to everything in life, I believe, and especially within growth, physically, mentally, spiritually. Because if you aren't self-aware, then you do not know whether you are doing something right or wrong, or whether you need to improve, or whether you've had a really good day. If you're not self-aware to look at yourself in the mirror and think, I could have done better, or that was really good, then you can never hold yourself accountable. And if you can't hold yourself accountable, you can't take back that power to say, that was my bad. Now what can I do about it, and how can I improve? And I love the message that you've just said, because that's essentially what you have done. And talking about self-worth, and you've been on this journey with your own mental health, is that you've took back that power and said, nobody's going to do it other than me, but what can I do every single day to make sure I am the best version of myself?
Yeah, and hey, you know, I don't have it all figured out. I don't think anybody does. There are days when I wake up and I think, you know, I feel really crappy today. And, you know, why am I doing this? Am I the right person to be doing this? And again, it's that self-awareness piece that I can look in the mirror and think, okay, you know, I don't look the best, or, you know, I did these things in the past, I made mistakes or whatever, but I need to cut myself some slack. And I think it's around knowing yourself and just accepting who you are and just trying to be the best that you can be.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? If you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I did my best, that's the key, isn't it?
Oh, that is the key, yes.
Yeah. And I think, again, that's something I struggle with. And my partner and I had a conversation yesterday. I'm probably similar to yourself. I love getting to the gym first thing in the morning, setting the day right, setting the intention. And this week I've had a bit of a slow week in terms of being able to get up in the morning. And it was too slow for me. And she just said, Tom, like, do you not think it's a blessing that you own your own business? There's nobody holding you accountable to the fact that you have to get to the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning. So if you have that one day where you don't quite get there,
it's okay.
It's okay. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you know what, you're right.
Yeah.
So, but it's hard though.
Self-awareness is a huge piece, and you know, I don't think we'll ever really know ourselves, but you know, it's an evolution.
Definitely. What is the goal moving forward then? You've got a lot going on, you know, the wellness and the body image campaigning, acting, influencing, you know, your socials have had a significant increase over the last few months and years. You know, you've got all these plates spinning. But what is the goal moving forward? Or goals?
I think, you know, it's an interesting question. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I still kind of don't know what I want to do. So I don't know necessarily the goal. All I know is that being on this journey and going through this and having all these different strings to my bow, I enjoy the variety and I enjoy doing that. And what I've learned from doing that is at my core, I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
An entertainer. You know, I love to create, and I love to create like art in various forms. You know, growing up as a young kid, I loved to kind of be with my brother and friends and like put on like, you know, those like kid shows for your parents and things like that. And then kind of going into acting, I told stories through that and through sort of visual media on screen. And then the public speaking is now talking about my own story. So
talk to me more about the public speaking, sorry, just to digress slightly. Because I'm a public speaker, as you know, and I talk about my journey, my mental health story, the loss of my brother. If you could capsulate in a minute or have 30 seconds, what would you say that you explain, or your journey within the public speaking for the people listening? I'm sure they'd be really, really interested to know, to understand, you know, if you was to get up in front of people, in front of an audience, what is it that you would say? What is the message behind the public speaking?
The message is to love yourself.
Yeah.
Is to be all right with yourself. Yeah. I talk around my story, all of the different avenues that I've had, and we all have a story to take. But you know, I talk around, you know, being in Hollywood and, you know, navigating through that and all of the cool stuff that people might, want to know about, and, the people I've met, and kind of how that's transformed who I am, and then kind of going through the darker experiences in my life and how I have used that pain and turned that into a positive. And actually, talking around social media and the impact that social media can have on body image and mental health, and just letting people walk away. My goal is anyone who comes to my talks, whether that's in schools, whether that's at big conferences or organizations, for anyone who comes, that they walk away just feeling better about themselves, that actually they can say, I need to cut myself some slack.
I love that.
So that's what I try to get. And that is the essence of my goal as such.
Yes.
I want people to be entertained. I want people to be inspired, and I want people to be empowered. And that's why I feel like I do so much, because I want to reach people through so many different channels with one of those types of messages.
I love that, because it's very similar to myself. I know we had a conversation in the car on the way here about, you're really pushing the social channels, that, your TikTok and Instagram, and obviously I've seen the growth on there, which is fantastic, but it's the passion. It's not about you, it's about your message and how that'll help other people, and getting that across, especially with the growth that you've had. I can imagine that you're helping a hell of a lot of people, because it impacts a lot more people than you probably would ever imagine. The body image and the self-worth, and especially, like you said, social media is a great platform for sharing a positive message, but equally it comes with a lot of negatives and toxicity, per se.
Yeah, for every, I have to know myself, that when I push these things out on socials, it's not all positive comments. There are people who are like, why are you talking about that? And, blah, 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 whatever. I don't know what they want to say. But, I have to, for all of those types of comments, I'll get one DM from somebody that will be like, I'm going through that too, and that really helped me. And that's what I tap into. That's the thing that makes me continue to do what I want to do. And that's why I try to use my platforms to amplify those messages. Because from the surface, and I'm sure you get the same, Tom, is that, people will look at me from what they see on socials, and I've had the comments that they'll say, why are you talking about body image? You're conventionally attractive or whatever. How can you have low self-esteem? And people might say about you, how can you have mental health issues? Whatever, go through your mental health. But the point is that no matter who you are, you can have these challenges and suffer from that. And the more that we can kind of destigmatize these types of areas, that it's not just certain people that suffer or have these challenges, is anybody, and that's what I want to get across, is it can happen to anybody.
Do you not think that's why the rates of depression and suicide within people, but especially men, are so much higher? Because somebody might look at somebody like myself or yourself and think, oh, they're not ever have any problems. And then when we do, not in particular being yourself, but certain people, they have that belief that they think they can't have a problem. They can't have something wrong with them because they look a certain way or they act a certain way. But in reality, mental health doesn't discriminate. It can affect anybody at any time. But that one person that's really struggling, they might have that perception that they're not allowed to struggle, and they're not allowed to not be okay. But in reality, it's okay not to be okay. And just because you look or act a certain way doesn't mean that you're not allowed to open up and talk about the way you're feeling. And like you said, if you destigmatize that perception, then I believe that it would help a lot more people and hopefully reduce the rates in depression and suicide, especially in men.
Yeah, and I always talk around, when I share my story and I talk around, I feel personal obligation in being vulnerable and sharing my story to help other people. But that's not to say that everybody out there has to be vulnerable and start telling their stories. Do you know what I mean? But what it allows is an outlet for people to resonate. And if they want to talk around their own life experiences, that they find forums that they can do that. And that was almost like they're given a blessing from hearing somebody else's story to enable them to share their own. But not everybody's like that. And,
And that's okay.
And that is fine too.
Yeah.
I did my first talk a couple of years ago, talking around this thing, and I was really nervous because although I've sort of performed, speaking about myself was really nerve-wracking and very daunting because I've only ever sort of told stories being a character. So talking about myself, it was laying it all on the table. And to kind of prepare for that, this is kind of a funny story. So I would watch a lot of like the TED Talks, or I would watch like motivational speeches online to kind of get in to prepare. And all I found was like at the end of somebody's talk, you'd get, and these are mainly American talks I'm watching, right? And this is just to put it into some context, that at the end of the talks, like the audience would be like out of their seats and they'd be like, woo! Amazing. So I thought, okay, I need my talk to be like that. I did my first talk and it was complete silence, and like people just got up, clapped, and walked out the room. And I was like, I suck. I'm never doing this again. But what I have found from that is that because I'm talking about such a rich, deep content, that people don't have questions. People take it in, and they'll go away and think about it, and they might message me on Instagram later, because actually sometimes you don't want to ask a question in front of a load of random people and talk around your own stories, because you're not at that point to do that. And that's okay. And now when I'm talking, even if there's silence and nobody has questions, I'm like, that's fine, because not everybody is ready to have that conversation with themselves.
I resonate that with a lot, because I have the same experience delivering my talks. And again, it goes back to that self-worth, like unless you're getting like a massive round of applause, didn't quite get it at the time. But really, and this happens quite a lot, I say at the end of my talks, I appreciate and understand more than anybody how sensitive mental health is. And I get, when you're in year 10 or 11, the last thing you want to do is put your hand up and speak in front of everybody in your year group. It's nerve-wracking. If you want to drop me a message on any of my socials, I'll come back to you as soon as I can, and I'll give you the best answer I can. And the amount of messages that I then get, it then makes me like, yeah.
You're doing the right thing, and it's, that, you're doing awesome work. So,
appreciate that.
And, I still, weirdly, I get more nervous when I'm speaking to schools than I do to organizations. I don't know why. I think sometimes it puts me back into when I was at school, and I was sort of picked on at school, and I kind of get put into that place. But with anything, take away that do them afraid, Fear is the thing that stops us from doing stuff, but do it afraid. If you believe in the cause, you believe in the mission, why not?
Do it anyway.
Yeah.
Push yourself out your comfort zone.
Exactly, yeah.
I think that's, I had a conversation with somebody the other day, like in my opinion, I believe the reason why mental illness is as high as it is at the moment for a few different reasons. Especially in England, as a culture, we have this culture where we go out every weekend, boozing, partying. So we're on this extreme high at the weekend, and then on this extreme low through the week. And then it's rinse and repeat every weekend. So that's going to damage our mental health, because the dopamine, as mentioned earlier, once it's as high as it is on the weekend and it comes down and you're doing that, that's going to affect our mental health. But also because of the technological advances that we have in today's society, in a way, life has become really easy. So people aren't pushed out of their comfort zone to the point where you can order your evening meal with a swipe of a finger. You can go on a date with a girl, swipe of a finger. You can pretty much do anything with a swipe of a finger on your phone, but that doesn't require any kind of hard work. There's nothing involved with that. So this dopamine that we talk about, it's going lower and lower and lower, because we're never pushing ourselves out of the comfort zone. We're never doing anything that requires that.
And it's all short-term gratification, right? You do that, you feel good, but 10 minutes later,
feel crap.
You need something. You need something else.
Yeah.
And I think it's these types of things where you are self-aware and you're navigating the road to where you feel your purpose is. Those are the things that give you the long-standing satisfaction. And that's what I found now. It's the impact that I'm making that kind of, on days where I don't feel great, or I look in the mirror and I think, I wish I could change that. I'm reminded of the impact that I'm having on people.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Going back to what you said earlier, I was interested regarding your public speaking. Two things. Again, for the listeners, I think they'd be really interested to know more about the Hollywood side of things. But also you said about your darkest times, and the reason why I ask about that is because, this podcast is all about inviting interesting, inspirational people on that have been through a dark time but overcome adversity. But before we go on to that point, tell me more about Hollywood. I bet that was a fascinating time.
It's good, I'm still in those circles. It's fun. There's a lot. I'm not a drinker, but there's a lot of fun parties. You meet a lot of fun people, big people.
Who was the most famous person you ever met?
Oh, do you know what? So I went to a school a couple of weeks ago, and it's funny with schools in organizations, when you get the questions, they're really like meaningful. And, I've gone through this, I've gone to schools, and all the questions I get is like, what's your favorite car? And, I was asked, what's your net worth? And it was sort of, who's the most famous person you met? But I like those questions, it's very lighthearted. And if it's a thing that gets them, if that's the avenue they want to resonate with me, then I'm happy to, try.
That was a little school kid in me coming out then.
Yeah, that's it, is it? But so I was asked this question, and I said, probably, I've met quite a few. I was scouted by, for any of the older listeners who are listening, I was scouted by Dustin Hoffman.
Wow.
He was the one who found me. He picked me out in a crowd. And that's where a casting agent found me. So again, when it goes back to that whole, I had no self-worth, but like this Hollywood legend was like, this guy, you have a face for TV.
Yeah.
So I always think, I've worked with Jennifer Lopez, but so I have two that I probably would say is the most famous. One is Paul Walker. I grew up from the Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
I grew up as I
was
had like a man crush on Paul.
Yeah. I was devastated when I heard that news.
I think I literally sobbed. He was like a god to me.
Yeah, those films are the best.
Yeah, and so I met him, and then also probably Will Smith. So I said Will Smith at a school, and the kid, he was like, is that the guy that slapped somebody? And I was like, how do you not know who Will Smith is other than he just slapped somebody? I was like, wow, I'm showing my age here. But yeah, they're probably the ones. But it's funny because when you're in when I first started out, and you go to these parties or you go to these red carpet events, and you see them, and you're like, I really want to go up and talk to them. But they are, I think everybody says it, but they are just normal people.
Sure, yeah.
They are just normal people. But no, it was good. And, from all the positives, it was a very lonely time as well. I had just come out of school. I was living in LA. I didn't know anybody. So it was very lonely for me to kind of be on my own with all my thoughts and, sort of negative body image in the way that I thought. And you had all of these people around, and I took advice from people. I didn't take advice from people. I trusted wrong people. I lost out on a lot of money. I lost a lot of big Hollywood people, a lot of money, just because I was so young and naive. And I think, one of the things when you're in that industry, and we see it a lot, it was in recent news about, child stars and things like that. You just need to have good guidance around you, good people around you. And unfortunately, there are great people out there, but they're not always there.
Mm. Yeah, I can imagine. That was such a crazy time, but especially being 17 years old, being in Hollywood, in that atmosphere, in those environments with all these big stars, I bet, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was quite overwhelming at times.
Overwhelming. I saw, again, coming from a small town, I saw so much stuff that I was exposed to that I was like, wow, I didn't even know. I just thought these things happened on TV. You know what I mean? Like the parties that you would see in American TV shows in Beverly Hills. I was now at one of those parties. I'm like, what? This is actually real.
Is it as you imagine? Like when you
It's
think about
totally as you imagine. Probably even crazier. You know,
Yeah,
there's
I bet.
like there are some things that I won't say on camera that I've seen, but yeah, no, it's fun. But again, there's just it's a very like rock and roll lifestyle. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs, but I saw a lot of that.
Is there anything that you can tell us on camera?
Maybe not. I mean, yeah. I mean, I've signed NDAs and things
Sure,
for some
no,
of the
no, that's
stuff.
fair
So,
enough. So talk to me then through, again, you very kindly explained there were some really dark times. And like I said, this podcast is sharing inspirational stories about overcoming adversity. What were those times and how did you overcome that adversity?
yeah, I think again, having such negative body image about myself, having no self-worth, and again, in those lonelier times, going to auditions where you're told no, being in the gym all the time, and then even seeing photos of myself. I remember one of my first shoots. I think probably my first shoot around 10 years ago was for GQ magazine, and that was a big one for me. And kind of from there, I started getting more photo shoots. But all the different photos I saw, I would look at and think, wow, I look so good then. But I look back and I think, I don't even know if that was me, because you have to do, and to a degree it is me. But, you have to go through strict diets and you have to get, fitness workouts like weeks in advance. And then on the day, you're kind of limited to what you can eat, so you still look as cut as possible. And then they get makeup and they would like draw abs on me to define them, and then it goes through the Photoshop. So I would look at photos and think, wow, I was in such good shape. But then there's that second thought that thinks, is that 100% me? Because there was so much to lead up to that point. And it just always got me questioning myself. And I was in a place where I was like, well, who am I? And what is real and what is not, and what do I believe? And it was just, I was in a sort of very dark place in terms of thinking that everybody was judging me on how I looked, because essentially that was my job.
I think, sorry, just to go back to what you've just said there, again, I think that is why so many people struggle with themselves, is because they see this image in a magazine or they see this image on social media, and like you've just said, you thought to yourself, that's not even me. Like you, the person in the image, you looked at that person and thought, that's not even me. And with the makeup on the abs and everything like that, it's a very toxic place to be in, especially within the fitness industry, and the amount of strenuous exercise and everything that these people put themselves through, and on low calories, which affects your mental health in a significant way. To look on a magazine or on an image, I've been there in the past, and you just think that is not real life.
It's not attainable.
It's not sustainable. Yeah, of course,
because I could potentially get to it, and people who are in that industry could get to it because they have the time to do it. But for the average person who has a family, who has a job, they can't dedicate all their time to in the gym, working out all the time, or eating all the right foods, because they have so many external factors to do. And I think that's a really important thing for people to take away, is that what you see, their lifestyle is completely different. Also, I grew up, wanting to look like people in the magazines and have bodies like them. I didn't realize at the time, but my body composition, the way I'm built, is totally different. So I would never be able to replicate, that guy's abs or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Because our bodies are totally different. So it was just around just being the best version of me. And now I'm not in the same shape that I was 5 years ago, because my lifestyle is different. I'm not in the gym all the time. I'm not eating things, because there's a balance between wanting to look right. I put so much pressure on how I looked, but now it's sort of, I have a life to live as well, and I want to enjoy that life as well.
That balance.
There's that balance. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with wanting to level up in terms of how you look and go to the gym and things. You know, I still do it now because coming back to that whole holistic well-being stuff, when you put in the work, when you eat the right foods, when you look after your skin, get enough sleep, drink water, you will naturally look better. You know, physically, your complexion will be better, etc. So when you look better and you feel you look better, your confidence is going to improve.
100%.
You know, so you'll be much more body confident. You'll be much more positive in your self-esteem. So then that energy that you're giving out is exerted. You know, people can see that energy. And I always say, you know, trying to support other people's mental health is not around, you know, is not around forcing people to make a change or, you know, whatever. It's around coming with those behaviors and giving that type of energy that people can see and they want to emulate. You know, when I talk at organizations and around leadership, I always say, you know, if you have people who are struggling or they want to progress, etc., you know, to bring in a really inclusive, positive, healthy culture, you as a leader, you just have to bring the energy that you want people, and everybody else will change because they'll see that and they'll just want to replicate it by virtue.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that completely. And that's something within the furniture business that we've done, or, you know, I've tried to do as well as I can. Is, you know, I'm the managing director of this business, so I'm, you know, the one who's setting the precedent. I'm the leader of the company. So
you set the tone.
It's not about me telling people what to do. I just do, and then hopefully if people follow by action. So if I'm very conscious about what I put out on social media, but I put it out in a positive way. Like, for example, I'll put on in the morning at the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning, because then I want people to be like, Tom's there at 6 o'clock in the morning, I can do that. But then also I'll be like, oh, I didn't train today because I didn't quite feel like it, but that's okay too. And it's about having that balance about, you know, pushing yourself to your limits and trying to become the best version of yourself, but also equally knowing that not every day you're going to feel 100%, and that's okay too.
Yeah, for sure.
Tommy, I've always got a finishing question on this podcast as a tradition.
Okay, I'm ready.
So if you could go back to 17-year-old Tommy, you've just landed in Hollywood, you've just got your first big break on Thor 2, which is incredible. Knowing what you know now, this journey you've been through over the last 10 years, if you could have one last conversation with 17-year-old Tommy, what would you say to him?
Enjoy it. I spent so much time in my own head worrying about what people would think of me, making sure that I could show up as my best self, that I don't think I allowed myself the time to just enjoy it. I was so, you know, and don't get me wrong, you know, it's, you know, I had so many people around me who bet on me as like the next star or something, and, you know, I didn't fulfill their hopes. And everything's around like, you know, we need to be strategic with this and do this and this, but I didn't have enough time to just actually look back and enjoy it and enjoy the moment, because actually when I speak to people, it is a bit of a nuance, you know, not everybody gets those experiences, and I don't think I enjoyed it as much as I could have. And that's what I take away now, is everything, you know, being here and being, you know, doing all the stuff that I do now. I just enjoy it and I'm grateful for that.
I love that. I love that. It's about enjoying the journey.
For sure, yeah. It's, yeah. What's that? It's like not about the destination, it's about the journey.
Enjoy the process and don't focus on the outcome.
Exactly, yeah.
Be in the moment.
Yeah. Because when we get to where we want to get to, then what?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think that's one of the struggles of life, isn't it? It's like we strive and we work so hard to get to this thing, and then forget that the main thing that's going to make us happy and fulfilled is the getting up every day, working your ass off, getting to the end of the day thinking, I did everything I could have done. But then we forget that bit. And then we get there and think, oh, shit.
Yeah, and then we're like, well, what now?
Yeah.
Now we need to find something else to strive for. Just enjoy the process, enjoy the journey, and, you know, be grateful, because, you know, not everybody has the chance to do that.
Tommy, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you
for
so
your time.
much. Yeah, it's been awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.